Hello, hello. I want to do a quick review on the book The Good Drinker by Adrian Chiles. So, if you've lived in England for the last 10 years or so, I suppose, you're bound to have seen Adrian on telly. He presented the One Show for a number of years. He's been involved in presenting football quite a lot of the time as well on ITV. I think he's worked alongside Gary Lineker. He's certainly been quite commonplace on British television for quite a while. And he has written this book called The Good Drinker. And so this review I want to use as an opportunity to talk about why I kind of wasn't so sure about this book for a little while. There were a few things I didn't like about it, but then it kind of came to grow on me and I came to appreciate it. Why I've kind of compared it so much to Allen Carr's Easy Way to Control Alcohol, which any of you who subscribe may well know that I did a review on that a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, in the very early days when I literally just sort of did a review as quickly as I possibly could. But I still do these reviews. I enjoy doing these reviews. I love reading. I love listening to audiobooks as well. This is a book that I listened to on Audible. And doing these reviews just helps me kind of go back over the book and makes me think about what it is I've taken from the book. And the aim is to kind of share those things with you. I've said before that I do these reviews to leave something to my kids so that they can look back and get a bit of an idea of things, the books and the things that shaped me and influenced me for better or for worse, and they can kind of make their own mind up about what books they want to read or listen to as well. But also so they can have a look at their old dad and laugh at him trying to be a YouTuber as well. But I quite enjoy it. So I'm just going to do a quick review on this book. Starting off, I wasn't too keen because I almost felt as though, I felt as though Adrian was a little bit smug in places. It almost seemed as though he was kind of pandering to people because I kind of got the feeling that he was trying to be popular and sort of going along and wanted to be, wanted to be popular with the drinkers, and wanted to do the opposite to what Allen Carr does and not tell you that you shouldn't do it because actually that would upset too many people. And actually there's loads of good people out there and whatever who drink, and why not? If you enjoy it and it's not doing any harm, then carry on. And in some ways I think that's quite good advice. And he makes the point throughout the book that most people who drink don't have a problem. They drink about the recommended 15 units a week. I'm not sure I believe that necessarily. I think that's probably skewed statistics and that's people probably lying. I think he does mention that in the book. I think most people do lie when they go to the doctors about how much they consume. And I don't personally think that with a drug as addictive as alcohol, people are able to go that low. I think when you drink, generally you tend to drink a little bit too much, to be fair. And I don't mean too much in terms of falling into gutters and being abusive and stuff like that, but actually it does become a bit of a habit for most people over time. Having a drink of an evening, watching telly, or every time you go out and see friends, whatever. But Allen Carr very much makes the case for that, doesn't he? He says that it's an addictive drug and actually it's a con art, it's a con trick and all of that. And I kind of felt as though Adrian was a little bit schizophrenic in his approach the whole way through. It was almost a bit like he's got some really good memories from drinking. It's kind of made his life in some ways, but he also feels a bit regretful about the fact that he's kind of always done it and probably did it by his own admittance, do it too much at times. And I think there's also that nagging feeling as well that it is always damaging your health. And actually, no one really wants to willingly damage their own health, I don't think. And I think within all of us, there is that element of wanting to be the best version of ourselves we can possibly be. And that's kind of the other reason I do this channel. It's about personal development and developing ourselves and being the best that we possibly can be. And I think if you drink or take any kind of drug, there's always going to be that element of you that's kind of going, oh, you know what, would I not be better off without it? Would I not have more money in my pocket? Would my health not be better? Would I not have less weight on and lower blood pressure and less risk of cancer and all those sorts of things? But we justify it, don't we? It's sociable, it's socially acceptable and all of that. But he does make some really interesting points in the book. He kind of insists on when he talks about moderation and controlling our drinking, he talks about the need to count our units. And says how much of a nag that is, but how important it is to do that, to try and keep a bit of a balance on things. But I just got the feeling the whole way through the book when he was saying stuff like that I just kind of thought, I'd rather do what Allen Carr says and just give up altogether, because it's kind of, once you've got rid of that desire and you give up, you don't need to worry about counting your units and then feeling like the need to have a drink but stopping yourself. You don't need to exercise that kind of discipline. And I have given up for over a year before through the Allen Carr method, and I just felt fantastic. I didn't miss it at all. Slowly kind of gently slipped back into it again, mainly through arrogance, because I just kind of thought, well, my wife's drinking, everyone else drinks, I'll have a couple. Slowly creeps back on. Got back into it, but I never really got back into it in the same way. Once I'd given up for a year, I realised how much better off I was without it. And I'll have the odd drink, but it just makes me feel rough, and you notice it more as well. You feel fitter and healthier, and you do notice I just personally don't enjoy it like I used to. I almost have to train myself to get back into it and kid myself that I'm enjoying it. Then I'll get sick of it again because I'm not sleeping so well, and I'm not feeling so fit, and I'll give it up again for 6 months. I'll listen to Allen Carr again, and I'll kind of re-brainwash myself. I think the Allen Carr book is really, really good for getting you to understand why you drink in the first place and actually how it's not that great. Whereas Adrian Chiles is kind of saying it kind of is great. He thinks that first drink is a really nice feeling. He admits the second one isn't quite so good, the third one even less good again. But he kind of says that he always wants to be able to go and have a pint. And I kind of get that as well. And I think that's maybe why I kind of get back into it sometimes as well. I kind of over-romanticize and think, well, actually, I want to be able to go with my wife to have a drink in a beer garden and just waste time. Because you don't want to stay in a pub for quite so long if you're not drinking. You know, it's the alcohol that kind of keeps you there effectively. It's that want to have another drink all the time. And that can lead, like he says, that can lead to better things like good discussions and meeting other people and stuff like that. But it also very quickly drains your wallet and damages your health, doesn't it? So it's an interesting one. I think it's good to hear someone talking about it from that point of view. He mentions Roy Keane and how he always says that there's always an excuse to have a drink. You know, he doesn't say there's always a reason. He says there's always an excuse. There's always, every day, there's an excuse you can come up with. And I quite like that. He talks about the comedian as well, Lee Mack, and how he had, I think he had an alcoholic parent or grandparent potentially, and he just sees it as a con. I got the feeling that he'd read Allen Carr's book, to be fair, just sees it as a complete con trick and actually so much better off without it. And other people who say that they're better off without it. He makes the point that we put it on an undeserved pedestal as well. Like we've kind of made, when you are into it, you got to make it this really important thing. It's like, oh, I'm looking forward to having this drink at the end of the day. It's kind of like the one thing I deserve it, I'm working for it, all that sort of stuff. And it's like, it doesn't deserve to be up there on that pedestal at all. But yeah, there are some quite interesting stories in there. He talks about how he reckons if he'd added up all his drinks that he's had in his life so far, they'd be about 3 miles long. And actually the ones he enjoyed would probably only be about 1 mile, so about a third of the drinks he's had. So he does acknowledge the fact that it's kind of addictive and habitual and all of that. And that's why he kind of comes to the conclusion that actually moderation is better. Whatever moderation means, let's face it, it doesn't really mean anything. Moderation is different for everyone. But he's trying to make the point that he wants to be able to have enough alcohol that he can enjoy the good drinks that he has, but not so much that he's going to damage himself that a doctor's going to say to him, you need to stop, because he doesn't want to get to that point ever where he needs to stop. Which, to be fair, is why I give it up as well, because I don't want to be, it's not because I always want to be able to have a drink, it's because I don't want a doctor ever to say to me, you can't have a drink anymore, because as soon as they say that, that means your heart's knackered, or you've got cancer, or you've got something horrendous going on. You want to keep your health, don't you, for as long as possible. But yeah, no, I grew to like the book. Like I say, at first I thought he was being a bit smug and trying to sort of like please the drinkers and stuff, but actually as he went on, he made more and more sense. It was more intelligent and kind of considered. And I quite liked it, and I think he's got quite a good personality. It's good that he narrates it himself. It's good that he puts quite a lot of his own personal experience into it as well. So if you're someone who's determined not to give up alcohol, but you would like to find a way of kind of maybe reducing and controlling it better, then yeah, it's a good book. But for me, it doesn't compare to the Allen Carr book, simply because the Allen Carr book, I think it's so much more exciting to be a better version of yourself who doesn't need any kind of drug, who's just happy to get up each day and be fighting fit and healthy and not need to kind of feel that experience. That excites me much more than someone who just kind of says, you know what, it's hard, I'm always going to be a drinker, and so are you. It's always going to be a bit of a struggle, actually, to kind of maintain our health. I don't like that because it's kind of a harsh reality, I suppose, in some ways. But I find it less inspiring. But yeah, Adrian Chiles, The Good Drinker, not too bad a book. Very good as an audiobook. And see you next time. Cheers.